In this video, I'll show you how to set up your Canon EOS M50 for vlogging and video work in general. We'll go over the menu items and make sensible use of auto modes. We will set up your info screens so they all make sense. We're also going to configure the button layout so you can operate the camera one-handedly. We'll also make sure that power consumption is reduced to a sensible minimum. And in the end, we're going to create a custom menu that will reduce menu diving by about 95%. First things first, use the main mode dial to switch to movie mode. Then choose a movie mode and choose movie auto exposure. This way the camera takes care of the f-stop and the shutter speed, and your mind is free to vlog because it's not wrapped up in the technical aspects of video shooting. Hit the menu button in the bottom right corner. First main menu, shooting settings. Shooting mode, we already said. Movie auto exposure for vlogging makes the most sense. Movie rec quality, now for vlogging, Full HD at 60 frames per second or 50 respectively if you're shooting PAL is the best option. And here's all the reasons why.
Number 1, you get a decent resolution. Number 2, you get a dual pixel autofocus. Number 3, shooting at 50, playing back at 25, you have the option of a 2x slow motion.
Number 3, shooting at 50, playing back at 25, you have the option of a 2x slow motion.
Number 4, if you don't choose to do that, you always have the fluid movement of the 50 frames per second. And number 5, you can always go from 50 frames to 25 or 24 if you feel like it, but not the other way around.
Now, 4K video mode is a viable option when you're working from behind the camera because you don't have dual pixel autofocus at your service, you only have contrast detection autofocus, which is a way slower system, too slow for vlogging, and there's a heavy crop in 4K video mode. Now, should you want 4x slow motion, you can enable high frame rate movie mode, which will get you HD resolution 1280 by 720 at 120 frames per second for a maximum duration of 7 minutes and 29 seconds. Unfortunately, there's no continuous autofocus and there's no digital image stabilization, so this needs to be a stationary shot and audio is not available. So it is a rather crippled slow motion mode that you can only use from behind the camera, and that will need some time to set up. But then you're getting a nice 4x slow motion. Sound recording. If you're using the internal microphones, leave this set to auto. In my experience, it's gonna get you the best results. However, wind filter and attenuator, disable them both. The wind filter is gonna mess with the sound of your voice because it's a low frequency cutter and some of your voice relies on those low frequencies to sound right. The attenuator is gonna mess with you because as soon as it detects audio distortion, it's gonna level down the overall volume. So in a windy situation, it can be very difficult to even hear yourself talk.
Like for example this Techstar SGC598 shotgun mic with a plus 10 decibel pregain and a low cut filter. It's rather big, but it's also a budget option. Currently it's protected via foam and fur-bend muff, and it does a much better job in protecting your audio from wind distortion.
However, you could also manually level the audio, which is what I prefer whenever I use an external microphone. Now, when using an external microphone like this one for example, I usually manually level the audio. But of course you could also run such an external setup in full auto. As far as wind filter and attenuator are concerned, they're both still turned off because now we got external wind protection, which will function way better than any digital solution could. First thing to do, set yourself up at about selfie distance, then enter the menu, come to sound recording, and for sound recording select manual. Now the rec level selector is an option. Basically all you gotta do is start talking into the microphone from about selfie distance using your regular voice at an easily sustainable volume, and then raise the rec level until the audio signal levels to -12 decibels, which is indicated by the 12 on the screen or where the bars of the audio meter turn yellow. And once they do, that is correct leveling, because that is a signal that has both enough headroom, so you're not running the risk of distorted audio, but is also strong enough so in post-production you don't have to raise the audio a lot, which won't bring in digital noise. Once you're done, set it, and that's how you manually set the audio levels with an external microphone. Lens aberration correction and remote control are none of our concern right now. Time-lapse movie isn't as well, because this is a topic for a whole other video. Exposure compensation, you're not going to set it from within the menu, you're going to do that via the buttons and the dials. ISO speed settings, ISO auto, I favor 6400 over 12800. 6400 is going to get you the less bright image, but also the cleaner image, because less digital noise is going to be brought in. 12800 will be brighter, but also a lot dirtier. It's personal preference, but I favor 6400 over 12800. Auto lighting optimizer and highlight tone priority, both are options that allow you to somewhat tweak the dynamic range of the video you're shooting digitally. I have used them in the past, but I've come to realize that a well-configured picture style benefits me more, because it gives me constant and reliable results, whereas the results of both these options kind of depend a little on the situation that you're shooting in. So I choose to not use auto lighting optimizer and have highlight tone priority turned off. Metering timer, none of our concern right now. White balance, leave it set to auto. It's doing a good job. Custom white balance and white balance correction, you're never gonna use. Now when it comes to picture style, there's two options really. Ask yourself, do you want to do post-production color grading, or do you not want to do that? If you don't want to do any kind of post-production color grading, my recommendation would be to use the standard profile, but to come in here and alter it a little. Make it a little sharper and decontrast it a little. This is how I get the best results in my opinion. Of course, once again, personal preference, and you might have to fiddle with these a little. Now, if you do want to do post-production color grading, you need the flattest possible profile this camera can offer. And here's how to get it. Come to user-defined one, hit the info button and configure this picture style. As a starting point, select neutral, then completely decontrast and completely desaturate. And this is going to get you the best picture profile for post-production later on, because it's going to be the flattest profile possible. Touch and drag autofocus settings. Touch and drag autofocus enabled. It's a nice feature. Positioning method absolute. Active touch area whole panel. Autofocus method, of course, for vlogging, face tracking and tracking makes the most sense. Movie servo AF, Canon lingo for continuous autofocus, enabled of course, focus mode, autofocus. Lens electronic manual focus, stills related, none of our concern. Manual focus peaking settings. If you're using manual focus, this is super helpful, so turn it on. Level high, color red. This is really gonna help you when setting focus manually, because it's gonna highlight the area that is in focus by using color. Image stabilization settings. Image stabilization mode, this is where you turn on and off optical stabilization via the lens. The good kind of stabilization that we want. Right here, digital image stabilization will get you a smoother shot, but it will also crop into the image, which means you're losing viewing angle. So digital image stabilization is disabled. Auto level disabled, because as far as I can tell, all that does is bring in digital stabilization. Button function, in this case we're talking about the shutter button up here. Half press, metering and servo AF makes the most sense. Fully press, no function, that doesn't make sense at all. Why not set it to start and stop movie recording, which is super useful. Auto slow shutter, no thank you. That's it for the shooting settings. Let's move on to the next main menu. We're gonna skip playback settings and come right to function settings. Select folder, not interesting right now, but for file numbering, continuous makes more sense than auto reset, because this way you're gonna have individual files and never a double. Auto rotate, on. Format card, wireless communication settings and GPS settings are none of our concern right now. Eco mode turned off, because I want to have full control over the power saving options. In my experience, display off 1 minute, auto power off 3 minutes and viewfinder off disabled work the best for vlogging. Display brightness for standard value usually works. At night, even 1 is going to serve you well, and it's also going to save some battery life. On a bright sunny day, you might have to set this to 7 to see anything. However, I would not set it to 7 right here. I'm going to show you how to use the 7 setting and at the same time not use it later on. For now, let's stick with 4. Date, time, zone, language, not interesting right now. Video system, if you're from Europe like myself, you're shooting PAL. If you're from North America, for example, you're shooting NTSC. Just choose your respective one. Touch control, both standard and sensitive work fine. Beep, completely disabled. In my opinion, the less attention a camera attracts during vlogging, the better. Sensor cleaning, auto cleaning enabled, means that whenever you turn off the camera, it automatically does a sensor clean. You could also hit clean now every once in a while. HDMI resolution, HDMI HDR output, none of our concern right now. Shooting info display, screen info settings. I've already set those up. All you need is those 3. Number 1 only has basic shooting info and on-screen buttons. Number 2 has everything. Basic shooting info, detailed shooting info, on-screen buttons, histogram, and electronic level. Number 3 has nothing. And here's why. This is your number 1 standard info screen. This is when you get situated, and as soon as you know you're in the right place, you can switch to info screen number 2 and make sure all the settings are dialed in correctly. White balance, picture style, frames per second, autofocus. Once you're positive, without any distractions, check what you're shooting with the info screen number 3 and then hit record. Reverse display on. Viewfinder display format, not interesting right now. Display settings. Now I'm only using the live view for video, so I really dread this. Whenever something nears the viewfinder, the screen turns off. So I set this to manual, and manual display I set to screen. So this doesn't do anything. Custom functions, ISO expansion turned off, safety shift disabled, release shutter without lens. You can actually enable this because should you use a completely manual lens that has no electronic parts and therefore can't be recognized by the camera as a lens, having this option enabled will still allow you to release the shutter and shoot video. Retract lens on power off, you can leave this enabled. Now custom controls is where it gets interesting. The auto exposure and focus lock button, the little one right here with the asterisk, actually makes sense as an auto exposure and focus lock button. The multifunction button, this one right here on top next to the shutter button, I've set to toggle picture styles. Exposure compensation button, or clicking up on the click wheel in movie auto mode lets you compensate the exposure, and in movie manual mode lets you switch between shutter, f-stop and ISO. Autofocus manual focus button, or clicking left on the click wheel toggles autofocus and manual focus. The flash button, or clicking right on the click wheel, I've set to the ISO. And now this is a super cool feature I've set to the trash can button, or clicking down on the click wheel. You can now temporarily get level 7 screen brightness. Just click it once, go to level 7, and once you don't need it, click it again and you're going back to regular screen brightness. Clear settings, copyright information and all the rest is none of our concern right now. Display level settings. Menu display. Guided is what you've been looking at right now, but I like standard for 2 reasons. Number 1, I like the freaking menus better, and number 2, the main reason, if you're using standard, you get the extra option of the star menu right here, which lets you configure your own personal menu, which is super useful. Now mode guide and feature guide, if you're a beginner, you're gonna like those. If you're an intermediate, you're gonna be annoyed by them. I'm not a beginner anymore, so I keep both of them disabled, but feel free to enable them whenever you want to. And now let's configure an awesome personal menu right here. Add my menu tab, select OK, select configure. First of all, let's rename it. This will be an awesome menu. Confirm. And now select items to register. And you can select 6 different ones. So here are my personal favorites. Movie rec quality, registered. Sound recording, registered. Image stabilization settings for number 3. Metering mode is number 4. Time-lapse movie is number 5. And format card is number 6. Now that we've selected all the items, we could also sort them. Mine are already in order. Last thing to do, come to the second tab right here, come all the way down to menu display and select display from my menu tab. Once this is enabled, from now on, whenever you enter the menu, you're first gonna go to your own personal awesome menu, which is such a help. It really eliminates like 95% of the menu diving you otherwise would have to do. And there you go. This is how I set up my Canon EOS M50 for vlogging and video work. When I'm in movie auto exposure mode and I want to compensate the exposure, I click up on the click wheel and use the click wheel around the shutter button to do just that. If I want to do post-production color grading, I come right here to the multifunction button and easily switch the standard picture profile for my user-defined picture profile. If I want to use manual focus, I click left on the click wheel, and should I suddenly find myself within a very bright situation, I click down once and I get level 7 screen brightness. Once I don't need it anymore, it's gone. And should I use manual movie mode, clicking up on the click wheel allows me to choose between shutter speed, f-stop and exposure compensation, all of which I can alter via using the click wheel around the shutter button. Super simple. And if I click right on the bottom click wheel, I have direct access to the ISO value, which again I can set via the click wheel around the shutter button. That's it. So now you can go and enjoy shooting some real cool video with this nice camera. So if you liked the video, if you found it helpful, please make sure to leave a thumbs up. It's greatly appreciated. Any kind of comment or feedback is welcome, and I'll try to answer as quickly as possible. All the tech that I've used in this video is linked in the description. As always, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching, and hopefully see you again soon.